So, welcome everyone who's watching this webinar about composing emotions. I'm Chloe. I'm currently doing A-level music, and as part of the syllabus, we have to do a lot of composition. So I thought that this webinar would help me with that. And we want to understand more about expressing and conveying emotions through music as songwriters and musicians, and why that's important to us.
Hi, I'm Dorothy. I'm a multi-instrumentalist and amateur songwriter, and I really want to learn more about how we express ourselves through music, especially since I'm more on the amateur side with songwriting and composing. And we want to try and find out more about creating an emotional bond with the audience through things like your composition.
We're really keen to find out about who Ella and In Earnest are, and could you introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about yourselves too? So In Earnest, could you introduce yourself first?
Hey everybody, I'm Tom and this is Sarah.
I'm Sarah.
She's Sarah. Yeah, we are the kind of primary songwriters in our band. There's three of us, and Toby's over that way in the next screen. We're from Southend. We play, or we kind of write and play lots of different music, but In Earnest is kind of, we call it sad indie music as a sort of a half joke, half serious thing. And we're all about kind of raising awareness of difficult topics, difficult subjects through our songs and through our lyrics. So it's all very honest and personal stuff.
Ella, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Ella Jarman-Pinto, and I am a TV and film composer. So what I do is basically create emotional music. My job is to create music that raises emotions in the filmmaker and the director's audience. So and to kind of really bring the creative vision to life and to enhance the visuals essentially. But it's all about emotion and getting those emotions right in my music.
So could you guys play a clip of your music to us and describe it to us? So could In Earnest go first?
Sure. Which one should we play?
Let's play
29?
Mm-hmm.
Cool, so this one's called 29. Give you an idea of the kind of vibe that we are.
Tricycles and curves of frustration. Her chest is screaming loud, arms aflame and ready to break.
So that was a little clip of a song called 29, which Tom wrote, and we're really about shining a light on the lyrics. Our lyrics are really important to us to convey like our honesty and our genuineness, and so it's kind of sculpting this sound that really complements the lyrics rather than rushing over them.
I think as well it's quite hard for us to pick a very small snippet like that because being that we are three members and we kind of try and write just for those three parts, we really have to build our songs. So actually some of them start really small and a lot of the time we end up doing really mad stuff at the end. So it's hard to find like a good middle ground, but that's a part of our music. That's something we do.
That was really good, thank you. Could Ella, could you play something of yours?
Yeah, sure. Just let me share my screen. So, what I'm going to play to start with, I'm going to play the first film I ever scored. Hold on. Yeah. So this is the first film I ever scored. I still need to hold this down so you can hear me. And it actually ended up being a multi-award winning film. And so you just need to know that my music is the bit at the beginning and at the end, and the sound design is what's happening in the actual drowning scene. It's not a drowning scene, but you'll get what I mean when I play it. Okay, let me try that again. Maybe keep talking while I set this up.
So, Toby, do you have any input about just if there's anything you want to say about In Earnest in general, just while we're some bit more introductory, really?
So I mainly work as a session musician for a lot of different groups. It's normally groups on the folk scene, on folk traditional scene in Scotland, Ireland, and England. So Tom, Sarah, and I, we all live in the same area, and the music that they write is very new to me. Like trying to play instruments are obviously meant for a completely different style to support a completely different genre of music, which kind of terrified me a little bit, but it was also really exciting to to try something new and support what you can. And with the lyrics being so powerful and quite almost a taboo subject over the last few years, to actually start talking about your mental health, but to then write parts but aren't actually the main part, that are supposed to support that, those lyrics and the melody lines going on with them, is something that is very hard to do without making it sound like you're trying to have a battle between, say, fiddle or violin and a vocal. And so I suppose I spend most of my time treading on eggshells, like trying not to get in the way of Tom and Sarah's vocals, but also deliver something that's very nice and supportive underneath. But just, it's the kind of thing of less is more kind of vibe. But I try and do that with a variety of different instruments, really.
Great, so that was really good, thank you. Ella, are you all right with the screening?
There we go. I think, can you see that?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Give this a go.
It's been over a year since the attack, but I'll never forget that day. I swam out. Same as always. Towards the point. Out to the back line. Then it hit me. Like a truck. Straight in the chest. Unbearable pain on the left side of my body. I couldn't breathe. And then the lights went out. One thing's for sure. I never, ever want to have another heart attack.
So that was a film by AstraZeneca, well, a film for AstraZeneca by Maker Projects with Havas Links. And I was a very, very lucky, very lucky composer to get on that job. I did so by doing it for free. But essentially, I mean, at the end, what I wrote there works really well, but it's pretty much, I went, okay, at the end, we want proper emotion, piano, and, it's a little bit cheesy. It's really cheesy. I'll listen back to it and go, oh, I could probably do a bit better this time. But, it conveys the emotion. It's what the director wanted. At the beginning, you've got these really low notes that come in, and you've got this kind of these long low notes which are quite rough and ready, and there's lots of close intervals as well, so you've got the harmonics that are really kind of battling against your ears, especially if you've got it loud, and it creates a sense of unease. The human ears they like to kind of predict the patterns in the harmonics that we have, so if you've got them battling each other, it just makes everything feel quite uneasy. And then a kind of a regular rhythm that just drives the pace forward. So that's kind of creating this feeling of anticipation and unease, essentially. And then at the end, you've got these very, very, when I say harmonic, not harmonic, yeah, very, very harmonic chords. No, it's not the right word. I don't know. It's 8 p.m. at night. I'm really tired. But you've got these chords that sound really nice, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Spent all day with my child. So it's just really simple. You don't have to think. You don't have to decode any of it. It's there. So it's easy. It gives you a feeling of rest and peace because it's easy. So that's just two ways of manipulating emotion through music, just through thinking about harmony and a bit of the timbre, which is the actual sound of the sound.
So we've got some questions for Ella. You've kind of already answered the first one, but if there's anything more you'd like to say, then that's great. So the first one, how to convey an emotion through an instrumental piece that doesn't have lyrics, and which instruments do you use most?
Okay, so I have been trained, so as part of my training, my formal training, I have been trained to basically know nearly every single instrument in the orchestra. So I have my preference, but essentially what I do is I write for everything. I have to be able to write for everything. So in that way, I'm kind of like a multi-instrumentalist. I need to know how they all work, but I couldn't necessarily play them all myself. But I understand them. I understand the performers, and I understand where the performers are coming from with how they play it and how they feel playing different areas and different ranges, whether it's high or low. Some performers will hate you if you play in a certain range. But the thing is, you can also manipulate their emotions to get their emotions into the music and get the music manipulating the audience's emotions. So it's really good to know all that stuff. But also, I love writing for voice. Voice is something that just lights me up because it is part of the human body. I think you can't get closer to music and the human experience of music without the voice. So, and I say this without lyrics. I am not a lyricist. I do not write my own lyrics. I have huge respect for people who write their own words. I tend to use people who are long dead and out of copyright so that I can just make the most of writing for voice. But I find it very hard to actually understand poetry myself. It's really interesting. It's different from what In Earnest have been saying so far, that I cannot really understand emotion through poetry. I cannot understand emotion through stories. Yes, poetry, I just don't get it. So music is my way of getting it. So when I write, the emotion always comes through the music. It doesn't come through the lyrics, and you could almost not have it there for me. It's just a conduit, and that's not to say that I don't really respect the poetry that I use, but you get what I mean. I don't know if that answers your question or if I went off on a tangent.
Thank you. So the next question we have is, what elements of a song or piece of music do you think are the most important when making an emotional connection with the audience?
oh, every bit of it, every single bit of it. But I think it's your intention as the composer. That's the most important element. Your intention as the composer, as the writer, the songwriter. If you have your heart in the right place, what you're trying to put across will come across. Because, you know, you sing a note and it has been sung like that before. You write a piece of music and it has been written like that before. You use a chord sequence, it's been done. And the only thing that it's different is the fact that it's you doing it and no one else. So obviously you are trying to be original. You aren't trying to copy, because copying is just boring. But you can be inspired by other people. But the only thing that is truly individual and truly unique is you as the writer. So that is what's really important, that you have your intention, if not sorted, you know that it comes from you, and you know that when it's finished you'll have a reason. For example, you know, there are things where I have a concept in my head. I'm like, I want this. My most recent piece was written about Black Lives Matter, and it was huge. It was like such an important part of me that it was like, it has to come out. And it was received so well because it was such a scary thing to have to put out there. But then I've also had music that I've written, I go, I don't know why I'm writing this. This has there's no bearing on me. Like, just this music's coming out. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And then, you know, maybe 2 months down the line, I go, oh, that was going on in my personal life at that time. That makes sense now. So it's about understanding that there will be that connection with you and your emotions now. And that is what makes what you're doing is unique.
I love that idea of like getting to know yourself better through what you actually write, and then thinking, oh, that's why I did that. That's such a cool idea.
Absolutely. I have written some very angry pieces in my time, and then gone, oh, okay, that makes sense. But, you know, the music comes from you. Music is a human thing. It comes from you. And, you know, you have to absolutely take ownership of it. And if you don't take ownership of it, no one else will relate to what you're doing. Or they might temporarily, but not necessarily in the long term. It's from you. You are the conduit, basically.
Final question for Ella. Which different genres of music do you like using the most when you like write music for films or TV adverts?
This is a hard question. So in terms of professionally and you know, in my work, I have to be open to everything. You know, something comes at you and you have to switch on, you have to do it. And if you don't have the skills that day, you have to have the skills by the next day, basically. So you have to be really, really open. But if I was to say, you know, my own, you know, if I was to write for myself, I write songs. But they are, if you have to classify them, that I would say they're classical songs, sung by, usually in my head, I'm hearing the sound of a classical operatic singer, usually a mezzo soprano, because that's the voice I like the most. But I also one day want them to be taken by a jazz band and, like, you know, here, take these songs, do something with them. Actually, I just want to have them to a drummer, a jazz drummer. Here, take these songs and do something with it. Because rhythm is something that just drives me. I can't write for it for toffee, although actually all of my music that I'm going to show you today is very rhythmic. I find it really hard to write rhythmic music, but it just absolutely, you know, it changes my heartbeat. It changes my stomach, the feeling in my stomach. So yeah, I'd say rhythmic music with like drums, strange beats, strange time signatures, anything that just makes you get into a lull, but also it's not quite safe and you're not quite going where you're expecting it to go. That and stuff with voice. Love it.
Thank you so much for your answers. So we've got a few questions for In Earnest now. So the first one is, what tips do you have for connecting with your audience emotionally?
So something that we've kind of over time realized is super important is to much like Ella was just saying, if you are yourself and you're relaying and writing about real emotions, real feelings, real experiences, it's that much easier to kind of, I mean, I don't think you even have to try to communicate that to your audience, especially if they're standing in front of you and you're belting out a song that you've written that you love and is about your life. I think people can feel that, and I think sometimes that's why we gravitate towards different music that we love and listen to, is because we see something of ourselves in it. And I think that is really important, just being yourself, making music that makes you happy and music that you would want to listen to. And if you don't feel like you're hitting the mark with that, you just have to keep trying, just keep writing, try different things, try different combinations of things as well, to get to a place where you feel like you represent yourself really well with the music that you write and that you perform. You got any thoughts on? I think it's just that having just that genuine connection. So also another thing that comes up when you're trying to promote your music as well is that if you've written, like, so you write a press release, right, and you present that to different bloggers, people who write about music of your genre, or whatever, and the more truthful you are and the more actual personal story you can include in those things, people really identify with different things like that, and I think it makes it that bit more of a standout. Whereas if you're just writing what you want someone to read, they're not, it's probably not got the content there that's going to make them really believe in it and want to write about it or listen to it. And so I think whether it's an intended audience, or someone who you want to kind of check out your music because they might get you a gig or whatever, if you present yourself in a way that is authentic and you avoid trying to kind of be someone that you're not, or be someone that you really admire, I think you just have that much better of actually making that connection.
I think you can probably carry that into a live setting as well, like at a gig or even live streaming. If I find that we connect with our audience so much more if we tell them the story of how we wrote it, or how it came about, or what I was actually feeling at the time of writing it, because then they actually listen to the lyrics and they go, oh, that's what that lyric means. So I think that's a great way of connecting to an audience as well.
One last thing I think as well is about there's you hear all the time about musicians, they move to, say for instance, lots of musicians move to London because they think it's the place to be to do music. Technically, there's some truth in that, but actually there's kind of something to say about being unique, not doing that, and actually that making you stand out, and then that gives you a different kind of connection with someone else. So in a nutshell, I think it's just about being yourself, and just keep doing it and keep enjoying what you're doing as well. I just think those are the keys to being happy with what you're doing and making that connection.
So the next question for In Earnest, do you create a journey through your albums?
Well, we've only just released our first EP, which is out today, and we've only just recorded our second EP, which isn't going to be out until next year. But we've definitely got more of a journey going on through the second EP, would you say?
Yeah, so the first EP was kind of, there wasn't really a plan for it. It was exciting to be writing songs that were took on a very different direction, and we tried to write songs that were kind of personal to us, and they were very intimate, and letting people in on lots of very personal things, because that kind of music and that kind of idea is what appeals to us. So again, going back to the idea of writing for yourself, so make something that you would want to listen to and that you can be proud of, and also it can help you with things that are like going on in your life. It can help you kind of do this kind of self-study. So you're working out these things through writing your music, which is really important. So the first EP was very much like that. It was very much us finding our feet in terms of what we sound like when the three of us play together, what we want to, you know, production-wise, how we want things to sound, because how you sound puts you in a, to most people, it puts you in a genre. So if you want to be in a certain genre, then you do things that put you there, which all makes sense. So the first EP was kind of like a trial and error kind of experiment, see how it went. But actually the second EP, we had this idea of actually connecting each of the 6 next songs with kind of like, I don't even know what you call them,
like
just
interflowing. Essentially, all the songs link with music, so it's actually one piece of art.
So then the music
they
never
seamlessly
stops
flow.
over the half an hour. The music just keeps going, and then actually when it gets to the end, we're going to do a little time codey thing so that it flips back round to track 1 and just starts playing it again. So if you were in the car, it would just play on a loop until you took it out, and with the idea sort of being that these songs tell much more of a story than the ones that came out today do. They tell a story. There's a narrative there that we didn't really design, but we realized that there was this story going on within this new bunch of songs. And so we sort of thought, how can we do something different that will make it kind of stand out from what we've done on the first EP? And so I think it will be different from release to release. I think it depends on your intention, because you might want to just write a load of songs and record them and put them out, and you might want it to have that patchwork quilt kind of effect where they're all a bit different, kind of maybe there's different styles from track to track. And if you want to do something like making 6 tracks that all play as one essentially, and work out those fun ways to make one key go into the next song, which is in a different key or time signature, that's fun to play around with. So it depends on your intention, I guess. Yeah.
What is the story, just out of curiosity? What is that story?
So a lot of it is my story through my mental turmoil, I suppose, and just trying to exist every day, really. It's got quite some quite deep meanings to a lot of it, but there's also a song on there that's there's also a song that I wrote about climate change, and there's a song that Toby wrote, an instrumental piece, which he wrote in lockdown about, being in lockdown and being at home all the time. And so there's a lot of themes that run through all of them, but it is essentially trying to stay alive in any form of planet, and you as humans,
Yeah, that's just like a train of thought, and I feel like I really connect to that idea, so I'm excited to hear it.
Oh, we haven't heard any mixes back yet.
Yeah, no, we haven't heard anything back yet.
Toby, what kind of things were you thinking when you did your instrumental stuff?
So I was seeing a lot of musicians, a lot of fellow musicians, some of which who are on the road all the time and just kind of go from one tour to the next. And this experience of actually being at home, being closer to your families, actually seeing your families, and actually kind of feeling, I suppose, a slice of normality. I was actually writing about, it was called The Comforts of Home, and just the idea of actually belonging somewhere. And when you are on the road a lot, you do sometimes just wake up in your hotel, you've missed your hotel breakfast because you got back at 2 a.m. and you just want to catch up on some sleep, and you wake up and quite often or not you'll have some disgusting tea from the night before just sat on the table opposite you, and you'll be going, oh god, this again. And then you'll get up and do it again for the next night and the next night, and you suddenly realize, but actually that's quite an unhealthy development. Even though you are doing what you love and you go and play and perform to people, the kind of life cycle that comes with it can be very distressing. But then for them people to actually have a break from that, and even though it felt kind of, at the beginning it might have felt horrible, I think a lot of people have had kind of epiphanies about living life a bit healthier, and that kind of idea of mental health again coming back in, and just enjoying having those little comforts like your own bed and being able to make your own food and going for a walk somewhere yeah, that's where that kind of came from.
It was interesting as well because I think compared to sort of other people that we know, other bands and artists that we know, I feel like we have, probably because there's the joint songwriting part to what we do, but it always feels like we're so far ahead of ourselves. So the songs that came out today, we recorded last summer. And so it takes you all that time to actually see a piece of work right through to the point where you've promoted it and you've released some singles, and then it's the time for the whole thing to come out. And what we found with the new songs that we recorded last month, including the one that we were just talking about with Toby, is that we also see the necessity to kind of have something that's been written in a moment. So Toby's song was written with that experience in mind, and so it made no sense to not include that, because it's a timely thing. It feels like you should record and release music when it feels relevant to you, and that's important, again, because when you're trying to promote yourself and your music, it's hard to talk about a song that you no longer believe in. And so that was a consideration there which we'd never come across before, the idea that if we don't record this now, it might not be relevant next year, and then it will never see the light of day. So that was different as well.
I definitely hadn't thought of that, and I was very touched, actually. I thought it all came out, and I was like, oh, they want my thing for it. Oh, that's nice.
So the next question we have for you guys is, how do you put an emotional either an experience or like a story or just general emotions into your lyrics without being too like straightforward or going the opposite direction and becoming too complex?
I think especially when I write lyrics excuse me, first before I put any music on. So I'll essentially write like a whole piece of paper of just scrawl that I can't really read, and I have pushed myself with being more and more blatant about things. So in the songs off of our EP, I'm quite blatant about certain things, and I'll like say how I feel, you know,
very plainly.
Quite plainly, yeah.
Yeah, I think when it comes to, you know, the which way to go, in terms of writing lyrics that are either basic or feel basic or are complex, I feel like one big thing that we've picked up on is actually going back to this idea of your intention. So who potentially are you singing this song to or for, and what kind of language do they use? Could you shape the lyrics so that you use language that you know they use, or how can you make it personal in that way? And also going for sort of an idea that if you use lyrics that anybody can read, then everyone can understand them, and that's good. Sometimes you don't want to say something quite so plainly, and maybe you want to make people think, and then you might go for lyrics that are a bit more metaphorical, or, you know, are a bit more complex. So going back to the idea of your intention, I think is really important. In sort of keeping with that theme of intention, I also think that a really cool thing that or definitely I've picked up in the last couple of years, is actually kind of from a compositional standpoint, kind of what is your song about, and how can you actually tailor the composition to really emphasize what the piece is about beyond the lyrics. So essentially, there's an idea here, and this is what the song's about. I'm going to tie the music to it and tie the lyrics to it, and then that, I think, has a really powerful combination. So the song which we played a little clip of is 29, and it's a song all about it's like a list of childhood memories, essentially, that I kind of rewrote in a way that they sounded like lyrics. And what I decided to do was I wrote this chorus, which was kind of like something to tie all those ideas together. And it's about, you know, I'm 30 years old this year, and it was about feeling like there were still so many things I hadn't done yet with my life that I'd like to. And I know I'm not old. I don't think 30 is old. I don't feel old. I still feel like I'm about 15. But I had this idea of like, so the chorus can be about this idea of getting older. And then, so what I did was through the 3 choruses that appear, they actually elongate each time, because I feel like as you get older, you have a little bit more to say. You're supposed to be a little bit wiser and that kind of thing. And so I just think it's important to think about that as well, to tie in all of the intentions into the idea so that the idea really comes across. So even if you have complex lyrics, someone might feel what you're talking about, even if they have to work out what the lyrics mean later.
So we're gonna hear the second clip from everyone now. So Ella, would you like to play yours first?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm slightly less complicated sharing screen this time. Okay, so this is a clip from a competition that I scored. So I didn't win. With my music on it. So I won in the end. Right. So this is about a minute into the music that I've created. Here we go.
Is that a standard issue?
No, it's not. Point and shoot. Police ahead. Maintain speed. Maintaining speed. Sharp left. Now.
I missed.
Hold on. All right, I need you. Drop in at maximum speed. Arm charges now. Accelerate.
Acceleration at 90%.
More.
94%.
More.
98%.
Stop.
Why the f are we stopping?
Get down.
Okay, so I realized there is some. Sorry about that. But yeah, basically, actually, do you want to ask me the questions about it? Because I would just end up talking, and you might want to like focus your question.
I was just gonna say, like, how did you manage to, like, did you find it difficult to use like a video to like as a sort of brief for your music?
So in some ways it's really, really hard, and in other ways it's a lot easier. So um I'm basically I like writing for me. I like doing that, but I also love writing stories. Stories is what drives me. So I like to have a reason for the music that I'm writing, and I'm not so interested in kind of when I was studying, there was a lot of kind of writing music, just sort of forward music, you know, move music forwards and like, and I was like, I'm not interested in that. I want to know about how people feel about it. That's what I want to know. And so basically, when I have a video, what I find really hard is getting the right, it's to match it. And I mean, that's the challenge. I love the challenge. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing this as a job otherwise, because you don't want to do things if you don't enjoy it. But the challenge is just going, can I create something that almost becomes unnoticeable? That actually you stop listening to the music. The music's not interesting. It's the feeling that you're getting from it. So, and you know, I'm listening to that and having played that to you, and I'm going, oh, maybe not there. Oh, that wasn't quite right. Oh, maybe I should have done that a bit later. And then there are other bits that I'm like, yes, I got that. I got that right. That was good. So, you know, it's so subjective. It really depends on who's watching. But so for an example of how music can change, you know, what you're watching. So when I first watched this clip, there's no music. I never actually heard it with the original music. I decided I didn't want to do that. Didn't want to see what the original music did. So I watched it on its own, and I was like, "This is really dull. These cars are going 20 miles an hour. Like, accelerate. It's not accelerating. Like, all these actors are doing this stuff, and I'm like, it's really slow and really boring. What on earth is going on here?" And then when I got the right tempo, and the tempo actually happened accidentally, and I tried, honestly, I spent 2 weeks trying to do this thing. And over and over again, I tried, and it was just not working out. I just couldn't get the right tempo. Everything was just not working. And then I gave it one last go. It's a competition. I don't get paid for it. So I was like, do I bother doing this? And I gave it one last go and accidentally just managed to click into the right tempo. And immediately the cars were moving faster. The tension was like up. You know, I started to get some of the humor because I was less bored. And I learned something, that like just having the right tempo of music moves the energy of the visuals forward. And I mean, it's very drum heavy. I chose drums because I like drums. I think that's it. I think that's the only reason why I chose drums. But also, I was interested in kind of the different sounds. So you've got these two elements. You've got the drum elements, and that's where the pattern started. That's where all of the musical material came from. And that was me just going, got to get away from the computer, got to find a new idea. I'm just literally going to put two rhythms over each other and like bang on the offbeats and just make it so edgy and uneven. So it's actually like two bars of patterns that are they're not equally repeated. So you have some element of understanding and recognizing the pattern and like, oh, okay, I hear that again, but then you don't hear it over and over again, so that anticipation is more. You can't be sure about what you're hearing. And then the second is when you get that metallic sound. And the metallic sound, again, accidental, but it worked. Most music is accidental, isn't it? Just with these three notes happening, I basically just was like, let's just keep cycling through this. Let's just keep bringing these things back. And so that feeling of familiarity with the feeling of what's going to happen next.
Cool. Really cool.
I have a question for it would work for both Ella and for In Earnest. So how does the tempo and the dynamics like work well to create an emotion within the piece? How would you like use them to your advantage?
So I can show you a clip from one of our pieces called Fables, and the ending is trying to like what we're trying to do is make it more chaotic to be symbolic of the way my brain works and how chaotic my mind is on a day-to-day basis. And the tempo doesn't even really change, does it? But it just becomes busier, so it feels like it's really rushing, and like there's this like almost like dramatic crescendo to the end. So I'll just play you that.
Sometimes I feel I'm doing nothing right. Sometimes I feel like nothing. Sometimes I feel I'm doing nothing right. Sometimes I feel like nothing. Sometimes I feel I'm doing nothing
Yeah, so essentially what happens with that is, I mean, one thing to mention probably that maybe makes a difference is that we don't have a drummer. So essentially our producer and guy who records all that stuff, he's at first saw no reason why we should record to a metronome. So we didn't. We went completely without, and actually most of the EP we recorded completely live together. So we felt the energy, we felt the push and the pull in different places, and we've grown to really love that. Like we absolutely, it just makes us different to other people. So with that end section, we probably do push a little bit. We probably speed up a tiny bit, but I think the things that there's also a string part. A bit like what you were saying, Ella, like an irregular string part that comes in. I don't know what the time signature of that part is, but he knows.
Tell us.
Sorry, it was my idea, not that I'm egotistical or anything. So the beginning part of that kind of lilts, like a 6/8, kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we were kind of hearing that, but then there's so in folk music you get jigs that kind of go 1 2 3 2 3 1 2 3 2 2 3 1 2 3 2 2 3, and it will be I kind of had that idea just I was playing acoustic guitar and kind of doubling that time up to make it go just that. It's exactly, well, I suppose maybe a little bit faster, but the tempo's around the same kind of speed, but it's just the time signatures work beneath each other. Because, well, I suppose at the end of the day, it's just double time rather than having a single thing. But also, it kind of works with that, again, that heartbeat thing. We didn't do it in the end, but like I imagine that kind of heartbeat going ba-dum, but just sped up, but going ba-dum, 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 ba-duggity, duggity, 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 and you can get that ba-dum in there as well. So it's all those different rhythms kind of working at once. And then the string part, adding the same kind of element. But then the two different guitars, so Tom's playing electric guitar, I'm playing acoustic. Tom carries on that kind of swung feel for a little bit, and then he goes off on one and just starts strumming as fast as possible, just to make as much noise as possible to then eventually build up to that moment.
Yeah, so in regards to tempo, obviously it's quite obvious that maybe, well, it could be quite obvious that you want to write something that sounds sad, so you do it slow. But it's not always, it doesn't have to be quite as simple as that. I mean, it generally tempo is a great thing depending on what the parts are doing, but actually when you do double time, it's almost like what you do in between the beats that make it feel like potentially it's speeding up, it's getting more exciting, when actually the tempo is just the same. And so yeah, it's about finding a tempo that you're obviously comfortable playing your song at. Usually it's also about, you know, if it's a song with voice, a song that you feel like you're emoting, you know, you're emoting the intention behind the song well. So if you're playing a song and you feel like you're playing it too fast, you're going to be thinking that. You're going to be thinking this is too fast. Then you can't actually perform the song as well as maybe you would if you were at the right speed. And I guess that's why practice is so important. You know, play your songs enough that you know that I can pick up a guitar, play this song, and I know the speed because it's almost ingrained in because I've played it enough.
Can I just say that sometimes you can make yourself play it too fast, because that is another way of conveying emotion. You know, if you do it on the edge of your capabilities, and that can come across really effective to the audience as well. So it's like, I totally agree with you. You know, it's about finding, yeah, it's you're asking about like tempo, and you're asking.
Ella, your mic keeps cutting out.
I'll try again. Sorry.
We can't hear you.
Write it down and show us.
I will try one more time, but like unmuting. Can you hear me now? Okay. So everything affects the emotion. It's the performance, like you say, knowing it really, really, really well, knowing your capabilities, knowing what you are capable of and what you want to portray within that performance. So do you want to write something, you know, this is less for me as a composer, because I'm usually one step back. So for me, I can do this by knowing my performers. So for example, if I'm writing something for a performer and I know it's right at the edge of what they're capable of, and I would only ever do it, am I still cutting out? No, I would only ever do it knowing the performer, because otherwise they're going to hate you. But if you say, this is why I'm writing at the edge of what you're capable of, because I want to portray this, they're like, fine, I will do my best and I will be at the edge. And if it goes wrong, it's all good, because that's what the intention is. But if you're writing something that you want your performer to cry, and your performer cries while they're crying, while they're performing your music, again, that brings that level of emotional intensity in. So every single decision you make in your music making, in the performance and the composing, every single decision you make affects the emotion. Every single one.
In Earnest, can you talk a bit about silence and how that's important in a piece of music?
Toby, do you want to go for that one?
Okay then. So so with silences, generally you can leave them to make a big build up. In this last EP we recorded, which obviously we can't play here, so there's going to be a bit of a pointless comparison. But one of the tracks we didn't record it to a click, but we were trying to play as tightly as possible. So we were working to, you know, just 1, 2, 3, 4, and it got to a point in the music where everything kind of died down, and then right at the you know, kind of give it a couple of bars time, and then this we basically put every single instrument we played in this record at this bit, so it just kind of explodes through the headphones, and it's supposed to be a massive moment, but we deliberately moved it so that it wouldn't feel like it was in time. So, but it would really come across as a shock and a surprise when you're listening. But that kind of silence between the two bits just kind of lets you sit for a moment and kind of take in what's just happened. And then, yeah, something dynamic will come in later. But I mean, this is a bit off topic, and I'm not sure how I help in some way, but one of the most amazing musical moments I've ever experienced was I was at the Albert Hall, and I was actually, this is quite bad on my part, I was part of a choir, local borough choir, and we were asked to come and perform as part of this performance in the Albert Hall, and I cannot remember the name for the life of me, so that's a bit rubbish. But right at the end, there was, think maybe 7 or 8 different timpani sets set throughout the Albert Hall. And they'd just gone into a big counterpoint, loads of different rhythms. It was all getting unbearable. And then it just turned to silence with the conductor standing there like this for about 10 seconds, possibly longer, just kind of, I suppose, around, 3,000 people in the Albert Hall, all of the musicians in front of probably around 200 musicians all around the place, just stood in absolute silence for just over 10 seconds, which doesn't seem long when obviously we're sat here, but at that point it just seemed to go on forever, and it is one of the most powerful moments in music I've ever experienced.
Ella, do you want to say a bit about what you think?
Silence is everything. I mean, essentially what we've been talking about in this whole session is, anticipation and what is expected, managing expectations essentially. So if you've got a listener who is quite happily listening and suddenly it goes silence, it's like, oh, what's next? There is no indication of what's coming up. Probably a better example actually is the radio. If there is silence on the radio, something's gone wrong, because there shouldn't ever be silence on the radio. So it can be a really, really words are gone. Really good tool, basically. And I like to think, if you have silence, I like to think of maybe silence being framed by music rather than music being framed by silence. We often think that music is the thing that you input into silence and then you take out. Whereas actually, if you can think of silence being the music, then that's another way of crafting what you're doing and another way of looking at it and deciding how to use that in an anticipatory way. And yeah, like Toby said, I mean, 10 seconds of silence in a piece of music is just, your heart stops, you stop breathing, because what is happening next? It's, silence can be probably, one of the most effective tools that you use. Especially if it has all just been sound. And I did actually, I don't know the name of this composer, but I did hear recently someone singing the praises of a composer who talked a director into just having no music at all. And they did a whole score, and they were like, you know what? You just don't need any music on this. And they just talked this director into just having no music. And can you just imagine a film with no music and the impact that would have versus a film with music? So that can be such a huge, huge decision to make. Silence. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for silence.
So we've got our last question, and it is, how do you compose music for a particular emotion when you're not feeling said emotion, or you're not feeling connected to that emotion yourself?
It's a difficult one. I find a lot of the time, if I have, as I was saying earlier, over this period of kind of lockdown, I've got so many different bits of lyrics and song ideas. And sometimes most of the time, I'm quite happy to kind of maybe have an idea for what this line or these lines mean, what I might write the song about. But actually, I don't force myself to write that piece if I don't feel like it's the time for it. And I think there's something in that. I think there's something in really spending the time thinking about the idea before you're really trying to write words down or put music to something, to kind of really work out what the idea is and how deep into the idea you can go. Because there's nothing more frustrating than having an idea and trying to write it before you're actually ready to. It's really hard to not write, to be able to write something if you're not feeling it. I do some brief writing for a branding company, and that's not so bad because you don't have to write words. I personally find if I don't have to bring words into it, actually I could write something. If someone said to me, can you write me something right now, and it be this sort of vibe, this sort of emotion, I could probably do it. But for me, I think I'm so tied into personal lyrics and stuff like that I just would avoid forcing myself to write something that I wasn't feeling at the time. I think that's important.
Ella, do you have something to add?
Yeah, if there's time, really quickly. I definitely have been in that position of, if I'm writing for myself, you know, you have to be in the right space, and sometimes I spend years on one piece of music. But in terms of like writing professionally, you know, I might have 2 weeks and I have to get it out. It all has to come out. It has to come out, has to be done, has to be good, has to be the right emotion, regardless of how I'm feeling and everything. And it comes with training. It comes with learning. I'm not necessarily saying professional training, but it comes with learning and listening to the music around you, listening to the music that makes you feel something, and you analyze it and you go, so why do I feel like this? What bit of it do I feel? And it's about knowing also, you know, that kind of the psychology behind music. There are lots of studies on music and how it can both affect and hinder both your emotional and physical health as well. Like noise can actually make you really unwell, excessive noise. So, you know, you tap into the science of music and the science of sound in order to create those physical responses that the body will make to those sounds, and that sound waves coming into your ears and into your body, those vibrations that you're feeling. So, you know, there are a number of ways to approach it, and like you've said, Tom, you know, when it's not personal, it doesn't really matter how you're feeling in the moment because it's not about you. But when it is personal, then maybe it's not something to push, and it's something to kind of just really keep as a kind of a self-care.
Thank you so much to our lovely guests. So if you have any projects or any upcoming pieces, as In Earnest said, they've just released some music, but if you have anything like that you'd like to promote, it'd be great to do it now.
Yeah, so as Dorothy just said, we released our debut EP today. It's only actually on Spotify and Apple Music because we're not too bothered about all the other ones. Yeah, it's got 6 tracks. It's out today. Go and check it out. That'd be cool. And also, I work for Southend YMCA in a project called All in Music, and we have a mental health and music festival that goes out on this Saturday, the 10th of October, from 12 o'clock on our Facebook and YouTube pages. It's full of performances from loads of young musicians from all over the country, and also has featurettes from mental health professionals giving you advice on how to look after your well-being and all that sort of stuff. So it's just a big old festival of music and mental health.
And so I have a podcast that I'd like to promote. It's called Beyond the Chameleon. It talks about belonging and how we can feel a sense of belonging in ourselves, and how that helps to increase inclusivity. So how we can, once we feel okay in ourselves, we then may feel brave enough to talk to people that we wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable talking to. Regardless of who they are, and it's based on the kind of the film and TV industry, because if we can get that media more inclusive, seeing more people and seeing more people in front of the screen and behind the screen, then we can really make a difference in the world. It's what people consume all the time. So that's Beyond the Chameleon, and it's on Apple Podcasts and also on Spotify, and I think Amazon as well, Amazon Podcasts too. And also, I am available to commission. So I offer a free creativity call to potential clients. So if you're interested in talking to me about your film project, you can get in touch. I'm Ella Jarman-Pinto. I'm the only one of me in the world. You just Google me and you'll find me.
We are running another webinar, and on the 11th of November, as part of this project. So please do tune in, everyone. You can follow us on YouTube, on Facebook, or on Instagram at BlueJam Arts, and you can find the link in the description.